If there's one piece of advice is don't be that guy.
Don't wait for the right time in your career or wait for it to be offered to you.
Have those antennae up and see what's needed and seize the day.
Find that vision and don't ever lose that vision.
You're the only person who's going to be able to actually make something happen for yourself. No one's coming to help you. So, John, last night at dinner, you asked, what are we planning on doing with this podcast?
I do recall that.
And I told you, whatever we feel like.
Right. And then I remember, then I asked you, well, what are your intentions?
My intent is to take small sound bites and make sentences that you did not say and then get you fired.
That should be
now,
easy for me.
Those are tough intentions. Yeah. Dinner last night, by the way, was incredible.
Yeah.
It really was good. Thank you.
Will didn't like his burger, but that was all right.
I don't recommend the shrimp burger.
Yeah. The Bam Bam burger.
But
Just because of the pineapple?
It was
or-
worth trying.
Was there pineapple on it?
Mm-hmm. It's just a
Okay.
little too sweet, but
Yeah.
I ate it.
You had said pineapple on pizza, but I didn't realize you meant there was pineapple on the sandwich.
Yeah. But
Okay.
it did say that on the menu, so that's my fault. I
Hmm.
mean, they didn't surprise me with it.
You do like to try new things, though, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
Look how close
what his
Ray's
wife
sitting to
said.
me.
Well, you know what? My wife, when we go to a restaurant, loves to look at the different things on the menu and try them. And 90% of the time, she's disappointed.
I
She
feel
is
like
when she goes too far away from the standard.
That's why
I
you
always
always
stay
just
with
get
the
what you
standard.
get.
Oh yeah,
because we're creatures of habit.
Yeah.
yeah.
But your wife likes what I feel like I'm on Ray's menu right now.
Why is that? Because he's sitting there.
Looks like he's about to eat me.
That's good.
So, John, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and how you ended up where you are today.
Be glad to. So, I would divide my career back into three parts. Okay. The first part was leading teams and financial teams, manufacturing teams, marketing teams. And I did that for about 10 years and it went well. Didn't really know much behind it as to the why and the what, and so to speak. And then the next 10 years, or the next actually 20 years, I really figured out what my mission was, my purpose was, what really drove me, what I was committed to, what I was interested to, and all that, and then became a voracious learner, and people saw something in me about developing and facilitating in that. And then I said, gosh, they're really equipping me. So then I retired and started my own business, and that's how I connected with AVG, and have been on this leadership journey since.
So, is developing and training people, is that what you say your passion is?
It is. I would say my mission is helping others detect and fulfill their heartfelt purposes. And I really think seeing someone develop, to see what's inside of them beyond what they even think is capable, is a gift, and it motivates and drives me.
So, is that something that you were always drawn to, or is that something that later in life you just kind of picked up on and you're like, man, this is my passion, or were you always kind of drawn to that?
I think I detected it. In other words, I discovered it through a number of experiences, and found that that's really what drove me. Was my natural connection, though, to people, but then to see how we could take me and them to the next step.
So, what do you do today?
I own my own company. It's called Corporate Energy LLC, and the reason
I didn't know that, but I believe that.
it is, and the person I first worked with on the company said, "John, you have a lot of energy, and instead of calling your company J. Horton Seminars, we're going to call you Corporate Energy." So I started on that journey after I retired, but the benefit I had was what Milliken and Company, where we're really, they trained me. They gave me all the resources and everything. And 90% of the people in the companies I work with are really interested in leadership development. And I was referred to them by people who had worked at the company where I was. So it was a natural. And then I met Scott. I met Scott Stonecipher at Milliken and Company. He was down there to look at operational excellence and to see how some of the best companies in the world do it. And we had a leadership session there on coaching, and I'll never forget it. As I was coaching some lady from Boston, really, when it was over, I'll never forget, he said, "Oh, so that's what coaching is. I got it." And then the rest has been history, to be on this journey of this culture that this company is building and creating with a very clear focus on developing people and wanting them to be their very, very best, because the culture here is entrepreneurial, it's transparent, it's go.
It's incredible. That's awesome. So,
Thank
Will,
you.
what about you? What's your journey? How have you ended up where you are today?
I don't know, but I'd like to say that earlier, John and I had breakfast and we were talking about the big event that's coming up in January, and I was concerned about what I might be speaking about. And I just took the note. I think I want to speak about corporate energy. I think that's what we've been developing, right? So can I steal that from your company name?
I like that. That's
All right.
yeah.
Right. I might even let you help me with the preparation.
Oh,
So
that's a great
You
idea.
just have to throw in
You're-
an LLC every now and again.
I'll do that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a great point.
So my journey?
Yeah.
Just, I'm still on it.
Yeah.
Probably in the early stages still. But like a lot of people, came to this company in manufactured sales position. So I've been a sales guy all over the United States over the past 20 years. And just in the past 5 years, really 5.5, was asked to step up and start taking different leadership roles on, and didn't really know what that meant early on. Still learning even what it means to be a leader. But for me, it's been a fun journey. Working with John, having a coach, having a corporate coach that has the energy that he has been very helpful for me. My personality is sometimes a little direct and driven, and to step back away from that and learn how to work with people better has been a challenge for me. And but it's something that I have enjoyed, because I do like a challenge. So my journey's been a challenging journey for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you do today?
What I do today, I lead a sales team that's pretty significant, close to 100 people if you funnel it all the way down. I've got 6 direct people that report to me, and really what I do every day is try to support them. I've learned that that's what leadership is for me, is trying to develop those really not just people that I work with that say report to me, but I'd say up and down the leadership ladder, responsibility ladder at ABG. I have a responsibility to hold all those folks accountable to being their best self. So today I love what I do today. It's a lot of fun.
It's awesome.
It's fun working at this company, but working with people and developing people and seeing myself get developed from his work with me and other people that I report to, they're still developing me every day. So it's interesting.
So one of the key things you said that I liked is what leadership means to me. We're going to revisit that saying,
Okay.
what leadership means to me. But I like that a lot.
Yep. Good.
So Ray, what about you? How did you end up today where you are? What's your journey look like?
Purely luck. Just a lot of things. Starting off with the military. In high school and all the way back there. It was just one of the guys, and I think getting into the military was, kind of what showed me that, step up and that, there was something to offer. And if you're looking for something, right, people look at that and they latch onto that and seem to follow. And, got out of the military, and, I still didn't have any confidence that, it was a leadership position. It was just, going towards tasks with the need to want to do a good job, right? And with a great work ethic. And, people would approach and, just ask questions of, what's that, what's that history? What's, where did I form that type of mentality? And,
Mm-hmm.
never really could give any type of answers. And, going up through the different years, it wasn't an aspiration to be a leader. It was, having a department and running it well, and then realizing that, well, hey, this other department, if it ran a little bit better, it would help, the cohesion of the two departments. So then all of a sudden, right, there was a lot of input, a lot of conversations with that department leader, and then, ultimately overseeing that, both of them, and just, grow through that. I used to joke that, I just want real estate. I want not real estate in the word, but right, more people,
Mm.
just so I can make a bigger impact.
Yeah.
And strive for those goals a little bit easier. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that's
or not,
awesome.
but
No, I mean that's sounding like you saw opportunities where other people didn't, and you wanted that influence, that authority, that power, and not in a negative way. That word
Yeah.
power often becomes a negative term, and it's not. But you want to be able to make a bigger impact.
Right.
So that's awesome.
What service were you in?
Yeah.
Marine Corps,
Marine Corps.
infantry. Yeah.
Thanks
Well,
for
thank you for your
service.
service.
Whoa.
Thank you.
Very good. Yes. Yeah. I love the reinforcement of really of looking up, doing what you do well, but looking up and seeing what's needed. And I found that in my career that leaders, they bubble, they can't help it.
Mm.
They see what's really needed and they go for it. And they're connected to it. They're committed to it for some reason, for whatever the driving force is.
I like what you said
And,
about real
yeah.
estate. So you're saying you wanted more people, which was more responsibility because you wanted to make a bigger impact.
Yes, sir.
Vote.
Did you see that it got tougher
Yeah.
the more people? Did you feel that burden?
Well, and the right then the additional leadership levels, right? So starting off and really just being, straight face to face with the people that you're leading, and then right, the realization of, wow, I can't handle all these people. Now I really need to make an impact, or find a way to make an impact with the leaders of those people, and convince those. And like you, I'm still working on that. I have a long way to go. It's easy for me to just make a one-on-one contact
Yeah.
times 200, right? It's
But then what's happening downstream?
exactly.
How do you judge that now? How do you look? How do you consider, have I made an impact downstream when you've affected the people that you directly affect?
Honestly, I look at it where there's, that I haven't made the impact that I want to, and it's a continuous journey to.
Do you count on the feedback of your directs? That what's happening downstream, is this working for you guys? Is it working downstream?
Some too, but I guess more, I rely on the numbers. It's the data that I look to most to see if the impact. But of course, right, you want to see and understand that there's well-being, throughout the ranks, if you will. And
Yeah.
But yeah, I think data is right. It's factual. It's not off of emotion, so it's a good feedback, or a good measure, I guess.
So would you say that you've always used data to make those, or has it kind of been an adaptive change because of the so much more real estate that you're dealing with?
I think from early on, the numbers really, I'm not that real intellectual person where I can do the deep dive on a lot of that stuff, but right, trends and right, and everybody around you going, woohoo, hey, great job. That's obviously, but I think that was part, because I'm really, I like to be out on the floor, but then, right, that data, accumulating that data, and those, right, they have to tell the same tale, if you
Mm.
will. And if they don't, then hey, I got to go to the floor because something's not jiving. Or, hey, let's look a little deeper into that data, because what I'm seeing on the floor isn't the same thing.
That's where operations came in to help me. I didn't know early on. I relied almost solely on lagging indicators, which is the data. And when it's broken, then you've got to go back upstream. But as a salesperson, I didn't have process in my DNA. I'm a cowboy.
Mhm.
And so we just go out and sell and do what we think we're supposed to do. I take care of my foxhole, if you will, and then that didn't work. That's not teachable. It's not repeatable. And sales, I've learned through my operations friendships here that we've got to make our sales process teachable and repeatable.
Well, and I really think that's what makes ABG great is, I don't want to speak out of turn, but when you look at most sales forces, right, it is separate entities. And I have my own experience with that, where it's almost that ops versus sales instead of being a cohesive team. And man, I got a great deal of respect for you and the way that you're leading the team and really trying to get the understanding of ops at the same time in order to provide better direction or gain more insight. And that's few and far between. And congratulations.
Fighting against each other and going to get us there.
Doesn't get you there, no.
And y'all control all the cards. So
So it's interesting when we think about leadership, when we talk about leadership. Will, you said something earlier about what leadership means to me, and that's a great point. Out of all my conversations I've had with people about leadership, us researching leadership, teaching on it, it's really become apparent that leadership is a lot more like, for most people, it's a lot more like a religion than it is an actual science. Like, to talk about religion and to talk about leadership and what it means, everyone has a vastly different view of how they view leadership, of what's important for leadership. If you ask them, what's a great leader, they're going to have different answers. There's a lot of reasons for that, but that's kind of where I start this conversation is, what does leadership mean to you? Like, when you think about leadership, what does it actually mean? So based on your experience, based on, who you aspire to be, what does leadership mean to you, Ray?
Threw me for a curve. I thought you were picking on Will. So leadership, when went through those notes and just writing stuff down, right? Leadership to me, what I wrote down was, right, helping others bear more fruit, right? So whether that's on a professional level and, right, selfishly wanting better numbers or, right, more output or, just getting better there, but also, right, on a personal level. So whether, it's leadership within the church, within the military, within business, being able to make that change. And that's been pretty recent for me, really, developing empathy, really seeing that, all of us have our own strengths and weaknesses, right? I used to think early on that, man, I'm not the brightest match in the book, and if I get it and you don't, well, but over time, right? Then
That's pretty good.
Over time, it was that realization where, okay, I have this strength, and I definitely have all of these weaknesses, right? And these other individuals, complement my weaknesses with their strengths. And so the leadership became an understanding that I need to help or seek out those individuals that have those opposite strengths.
Yep.
And again, so to make a great team, but also helping them realize, like I am continuing to try to do, is create a better self, if you will, right? There's, I feel like I'm taking over this conversation.
No, you got it.
No.
I appreciate it.
No.
The more you
So,
talk
but
about it,
that's so much
less
more they
I
have to edit out. That's what you guys. This is going to be a 5-minute little.
So I'll step
You're,
in.
bu- you're bubbling up, Ray. Keep going.
You said to help people bear fruit, and
Yes, I wrote that down too.
And so you remember the video that Derek has watched maybe 6 weeks ago, and they said different leaders and what leadership meant. And I think that's what you're trying to get us, Derek, is everybody had a different opinion of it. There were 50, and all 50 said something different. So, but I like that you said bear fruit. And I don't know if you know, at the end of the leadership article, the piece that we have to drop in is saying the question to ask yourself each day: who did you lead today? Since you said to help people bear fruit, I think I'm going to change mine to who did you fertilize today?
There you go. There you go.
I think
If I ever
Rebecca would
heard a
like
winning
that.
statement,
Interesting metaphor.
Yeah, it is.
Nice.
Who'd you fertilize today?
Right, yes.
Don't take that the wrong way.
Yeah, keep that in context, please. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Stepped into that one.
So, John, what
Yeah.
about you? What does leadership mean to you?
Really, I love this bearing fruit. Really, when I think of leadership, and I have been studying it, but more the experiencing, the bubbling up, and watching it, I really think of the word. I think of the word journey, and when I think about it, I still like a definition to give me some guidance.
Sure.
And that definition is, it's really, to me, the art of influencing others to willingly accomplish a goal. But in order to do that, I think a leader really does, they have to have a strong inner self, because you can get people to do things through authority and maybe credibility, but influence, when they willingly want to do it, to me is a game changer. But then when I think of leadership, I do think of the path. I think of, use your term, is develop a vision. You got to create, and then you surround yourself in what I call a guiding coalition, and that's what you really to be on board with it. And I think that's what ABG does at the senior level.
Yeah.
With the 6 leaders, with the CEO and their team and all that, they get this guiding coalition to get everything aligned. And I took this note on alignment, and I wanted to take it to Ray's point. The bigger, the larger, the tougher it is to align, because they're out there everywhere.
Yeah.
And that becomes a real challenge in terms of, and to specifics. So we're not theory here. It is organization structure. What's about the people? How am I going to measure them? Because at the end of the day, that's going to drive behaviors. What are my processes? So we can develop a context and to your point, always on decision making. Who's got drive the authority down to the people making the decision?
Yep.
And the last one here, because I see it in ABG, information is critical to making decisions. And the challenge is getting a system where they all talk to each other, and you're able to use that information, so you don't have to say, well, the system won't do that. And because if the system won't do that, that's a classic misalignment, because you're going to get behaviors you don't want.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't stay on the path. And then I think you go to work on just what he said, which was, and Will said, which is developing, your team members, because you got to have them. Because the rate of change in this organization is really quick.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
you've got
Yes,
to be
it
able
is.
to adapt.
So, Ethan, what about you? What does leadership mean to you?
I would say that leadership is really about having a vision and getting people aligned to accomplish that vision together.
Mhm.
However,
Wow,
a thing
that
that
was
kind of
awesome.
goes along with that is connecting both soft skills and hard skills. Hard skills as in accomplishing those KPIs, but the soft skills as in showing empathy and kind of being genuine. So I think leadership overall is a lot of things, but I think it's truly a combination of guiding people and having a vision of where you want to guide them.
Yeah, you need a job.
Yeah.
So, really, I'm hearing you say, I don't want to use a big term or put words in your mouth, but really you're saying I have to be able to lead, but I got to be able to manage too.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because the manage is the hands-on, and it's critical.
Mhm.
You go broke without it, because as we said, you can't execute.
No.
But you've got to have that path. And I want to only add it because I'll forget it if I don't. We were talking about leadership and change yesterday driving down here, and I with breakfast at you a little bit, and I was thinking about it, and I said, if you're trying to survive change, I don't know how you can lead. The two terms are synonyms. And then I had heard this, and I wanted to share it, was the only way you can ever win with management long term is if you have no change. And that's not going to happen. You have to have a commodity that will not change.
Well, Ethan
It's-
put in an eloquent way
Yeah.
that vision inspires people, leadership guides them, and then management moves them. And you've got to have all three parts. And you said it in
Absolutely.
a much nicer, it sounded a lot better the way you say it.
I once heard a synonym being used as a car. It's kind of the vision is the gas pedal, management is the brakes to make sure that we aren't going too far ahead of ourselves, and then the guiding is the steering wheel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you need
Great
all three
analogy.
if you're going to get to where your destination is.
Yeah, so it's almost like, we talk about leadership versus management. It's almost like, leadership is going to be able to be that person, kind of like what Ray was saying. Like Ray saw opportunities to align departments. Ray saw opportunities to build teams to have more influence. Like he saw opportunities that were there, but seemingly no one else saw them and no one else took the bull by the horns and actually did it. And so to me, like that is such an example of what leadership actually is. Like that innate ability to see those opportunities that other people do not perceive. You can have someone in a role and they're measuring KPIs, they're holding people accountable, but they're not pushing forward. They don't perceive opportunities. They're not strategizing to push the envelope further. And I don't think that's a leader. I don't think that's a leader at all. So we talk about like leadership and management, and kind of Ethan was talking about this a little bit. I mean, everyone, I want you to weigh in on this thought. Like to me, it is leadership is that person that's out front. That person that's out front, that they have that vision that no one else can perceive, those opportunities that no one else can perceive. And where it kind of bridges over into management is where then you set your strategy and your processes and your KPIs to measure how are we achieving these goals to get to this end vision. And that's where your day-to-day management, that's where that comes into play. Your day-to-day blocking and tackling, that's really where your management comes into play. What do y'all think about that?
My take on leadership versus management. Early on working with John, he puts a visual in front of every bicycle. So kind of going to your car analogy, and it's a front wheel, back wheel. We all had to go up to the board and place a dot on a line of where we felt like we were for the front wheel, which was the leadership work, the thinking work versus the doing work, which is the back wheel. And I probably put it in the middle. And John asked me a question and said, as the leader of the team and the size of it is, do you think that's fair to the organization that you're split between management and leadership? And I had to think about it. I didn't really even know at the time. And turns out it wasn't fair, that I need to be spending a great deal of my time thinking and pushing us on the vision and guiding the team to do what they need to do. And there's 100 people supporting me that take up the bulk of the management. And so I had to learn to move myself from a doer to a thinker. And so I'm probably 80% on the front wheel now versus 20% management. And that regresses as you go through the ranks of people that are actually getting the work done for us, which is important work. So I've learned that there is a balance that different people at different levels of their career in the organization or position in the organization have to fulfill. And I've got people that are hard, cold, stone cold doers that are in thinking positions, and to drive those folks toward more thinking is against their nature. It's against a lot of our natures that I'm a selling person. So that's been a fun part of my journey, is to learn that and acknowledge it.
So how did you bridge that gap? And I'm sure you're still on that journey, but how did you bridge that gap? That seems to be one of the most difficult gaps for leaders to bridge, is that, I was an excellent salesman, I was an excellent mechanic, or whatever, maybe an excellent painter, but now I'm trying to bridge that gap into now I'm a thinker and a strategizer and a leader. How did you bridge that gap?
Well, it's a wholesale change in your thinking. I've always been the guy that I didn't want you to worry about me. I covered my foxhole. I had my assignment. I did my assignment. You gave it to me. I don't want you looking back at me wondering if I did that or not. And I was always accountable to myself like that. And then the mindset change for me was to learn that I'm not accountable to myself anymore. I'm actually accountable to the needs of others. And it's just what you said, the bearing of fruit. If I don't pay attention to the needs of my people, then I'm not leading them. And so I have to think constantly, how do I help them be better? And that's not doing at that point. That's thinking how you can help them be better. So I learned that my mission now, or my responsibility to the company, is to help the others do better and be their best self, as you said a second ago. That's how you got to make the mindset change.
Yeah.
So with the mindset change, I keep hearing learning, which I kind of equivalent to adaptability. How large of a role do you think learning plays in being a leader?
Oh, a huge amount. Yeah, I didn't read. I'm a voracious reader of history, and so I've taken a lot of things that I implement or try to practice from successful people in whatever journey they've been on their life, whether they're politicians or military people or business owners. But I didn't read, I didn't study leadership, as John said he's been doing for 20 years. So I'm only 3 years into my studying leadership journey. So my head is filled with a lot of the euphemisms, if you would, of leadership, but it's learning to put those into practice. But and I say them over and over and over again, and the more I use them and utilize those, the more people see that I've kind of sunk into it. So it's a constant learning situation for me. Yep.
Absolutely.
So Ray, what about you? This journey of your leadership, have you come upon the issue of going from a doer to a builder and a leader and a thinker, or that just kind of come naturally to you?
I would say it came pretty quick, as as I was talking about before. Figuring out that real estate and not being able to do it, that kind of went hand in hand. But to leap off of some of Will's points, the realization, I think that what kind of led me to really aiming for a better leadership style was just to acknowledge that a lot of times it's just confidence, right? Where you want that team to present their ideas, right? Depending on their upbringing, their history, they may or may not have that confidence level just to throw something out there that's in their thoughts.
Cool.
And I've heard Will state it before that, and John, Scott Stonecipher, he's a great mentor, because if there's anybody that helps you feel comfortable in your own skin, right, he does a tremendous job. And through that, then that's building that confidence level. And right, that realization, well, through that, hey, it worked for me. That's a great idea to try to instill in the teams we're leading. And and then once you have that success of that team, right, then there's no limits. And sharing that vision, you're taking them, here's where we want to be in 1 year. That decision that's on the table in front of us right now, does that help us get us there, or does that hold us back? And so once that vision, they're able to make those same decisions on their own. And right, then you've got, instead of one person or 5 people, now you've got 30, now you've got 100, now, right, and it just keeps on growing.
So it's interesting talking about people feeling comfortable in their own skin and that kind of facilitating the ability to think and make decisions and help people grow and develop. It's interesting to think there's a lot of leaders that they seem to put on this facade of, I guess, formalization. Like we especially work in a corporate environment. It's very formal. There's a strong distance between themselves and their leaders. There's like this facade of, not necessarily arrogance, it's not the right word, but I guess this facade of,
I have the answers.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and it definitely takes away this ingrained human element that we have, that we need to connect to one another. We need to be real with one another. And it seems like that's something that's so obvious that so many leaders miss, is just that small human element of, you've got to be real with your people. It's a real person, like us talking right now. That's how your people want you to be with them. It's not this facade of corporatization, formalization, this formal hierarchy of authority and all that. That's not what people want. That's not what people buy into. I really like that you said that.
That's a great statement. It's totally true. And at the same time, right, it's providing that humility. It's letting everybody know that, hey, right, I don't have all the answers, nor do I need to have all the answers. It's us, right, that can have those discussions and really, get the home run. So
Definitely.
yeah, that's a great.
I think it's a leader that may exhibit those qualities may have a confidence problem, because I'm not so sure I wasn't that guy at one point.
Yes.
When I was asked to fill this role and I wasn't ready, maybe a little distance helps you hide.
Sure.
So, but you got to get past that and dig in and expose yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
And I see people that I work with now making that transition, and it's cool to see it.
Yeah.
That when they let their guard down and say just what you just said, I don't have all the answers and I want your help, then people start looking at you differently.
That's amazing to see. Absolutely.
You've seen that?
I have. I definitely have. I was taking some notes here. So I was thinking this one group, I can't remember their name, but they had 4 characteristics of what we call high performing leaders. And the first one was open to feedback, constant voracious learners, to your point, not arrogant. That's a derailer. It's having humility.
That's a great word, derailer. It's a great word.
It'll derail. You can see it.
Oh yeah.
Well, just hey, I'm smarter than you. You know that?
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm in charge.
Yeah.
But the last one, they said the most important was being adaptive.
Yeah.
Recognizing something's changed.
Which I would say we've covered all of that so far. We've talked at least
Oh,
touched on all
yeah.
of that.
I had one other thing, and in my energy, I was thinking about what Ray and Will were both talking about, because both are vital when we're back to the leadership and one, but they have a different focus as we were talking about top line versus bottom line, efficiency versus effectiveness and all that. And I've always been curious since the more and more I read is why people gravitate to that back wheel.
The back wheel being management.
Oh, I'm sorry, management.
Okay.
Yes, doing, and I think it. I really think it's. I think people find it more comfortable and predictable, because for the most part, you are reactive. I mean, it's scheduled. It doesn't have to deal with creativity, innovation, the hard conversation. And so it's even more challenging to make that switch.
Well, it's almost like whatever comes natural to you, because I find that the back wheel for me is much harder. That the front wheel is much easier and the back wheel is much harder. I feel like it's almost like whatever your innate mental abilities are. If you're naturally a creator and a builder versus a manager, I feel like either one's gonna be harder for you depending on essentially how your mind thinks naturally, I would say. And I've seen different people, and it feels different with different people. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I think you make a very true comment. I would add, though, that depending on your past experience and what was expected of you, and because a lot of engineers, for example, in my past company were hired to, they were smart. They were experts. So they were recognized for doing these things. So then when they come up to say, well, we want you to guide and lead this team and develop a picture for them and how we can continuously improve, they stumbled. They stumbled. So I think you come by your behaviors honestly.
Sure.
But see, there's going to be a percentage, I think, that do exactly where your mind is.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, how do you find that?
Yeah, exactly.
You're really exactly right. Those are world-class people on the edge.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I think that leads to a great segue of, we've talked about what is leadership in general, but there still begs the question of we've got, if you look back through history, and I only say this because Ethan and I have done research over some of your ancient leaders throughout Mesopotamia and stuff, and kind of picked out some of their characteristics and what made them tick on out through medieval history. And there seems to be a common trend with what the characteristics are with some of the biggest names in leadership, some of the most successful or effective leaders. And so it really begs the question of, like, in today's business climate, if we're talking about just business, but leadership in general, like, what actually is going to separate great leaders from just normal average leaders? In an organization, if you have 100 managers, maybe X percent of them are actually leaders, and of that X percent, some are average leaders and some are great leaders. Like, what really separates great leaders from just average leaders? What's your opinion, Ray?
Well, I think you can label it in a lot of different ways, but I think the root goes down to integrity, right? Because that could unfold into so many, different aspects, but the integrity, just like we were discussing before, of putting up that front and trying to portray that I have all the answers, right? That ultimately goes back to integrity. And, unfortunately, I think, in the world we're in today, we're getting farther and farther away from that. So
sure, that makes sense.
I'm glad you got that question first.
You see how I stumbled it.
No, you didn't. I like it. You're talking about starts with you.
Yeah. I also
and
thought
your
we agreed we
values.
weren't going to use large words, so
Which word are we referring to?
I don't know. I had 5 syllables, I think.
Will, what about you?
A difference between a great leader and an average leader?
Yeah.
I don't even think it's fair to ask me that question, as in that means I know, and I probably don't know. But
Maybe that's it right there.
but what I've learned to be a more effective leader is involvement. I mean, that's the key for me has been getting in the foxhole with them. I grew up watching a servant leader, and there's important qualities to a servant leader, but I think a leader that's with you, a dedicated leader every day. I mean, I've been lucky to fall into the understanding of that the more I'm actually working with them on an everyday basis, that I am completely in tune with what they're trying to do and what they're struggling with, has made my work with them more effective and built the trust between us. Other than just giving them direction and backing off and then coming in and checking in, it's a lot more intense than that. So really, John, one of the first things we learned with his teaching is involvement invites commitment. And I didn't know what in the world that meant 3 years ago, but now I do. And I still have to relearn it a lot, that if I'm not paying attention to what somebody's going through the way I should, because I've gotten busy doing something else. My rocks are my people. And so I've got to stay involved with my people.
Yeah, it's almost like with relationships with people that you lead, it's almost like it's not a whole lot different from other close relationships that you have. I mean, if you don't invest time in it, it's not gonna do well. It's just saying, like using a metaphor, it's a garden. If you don't water your garden, tend your garden, take care of your garden, the garden's gonna wilt and die. I mean, it'd be the same thing if you give like some type of an initiative or here's a goal, go accomplish it, and you don't check in and you don't build that relationship, that regular cadence with your people, the relationship's not going to flourish and they're not going to follow you. So I like that a lot.
Yep.
If you don't fertilize the garden, it won't bear
That's
fruit.
right.
Oh, that's a
Who
great.
did you fertilize
made
today?
me-
That's
It's-
a good leadership question.
Yeah. It really made me
Add some
think
spice to it.
of a gardener versus a mechanic.
Okay.
The gardener growing people and the mechanic doing things. And what that gardener does is provide trust. And I really think with trust comes risk. The more you can get people to do things like this, knowing that we're all on the same path trying to accomplish ABG to be the best.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the word I was searching for was present leader. Be present in their lives.
Yep.
As my wife says to me all the time, if I'm answering emails at
She said.
6:30 or 7 and she wants me to be with her, she says, be present in your life. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to be present in my people's lives right now.
I really like your connection you made there.
Yeah.
I do. That was good. But because if you're not involved, I mean, in and out, in and out, in and out, I don't know how effective that's.
Well, but you just mentioned with your wife, like if you're at home at 7:00, it depends on now if there's two different type of people. There's either integrators or separators, and integrators integrate their work into their home life. Separators cut it off when they come home. So if you're both like that, that's fine. But like if Rebecca expects you to not be on your phone at 7:00 and you're always on your phone, there's going to be that degree of you're not invested in our relationship, even though we've been together 20, 30 years. It's the same thing with your people. Like, I mean, it's just the human element of building relationships. It seems like it just runs across all constructs of life.
I thought this was taking a strange turn for a minute, but you came back.
My mind wanders and we come back.
But you're right. Yep. Yeah. Being present in their work life has helped. You feel that way?
Yes, sir. Right. Well, that's what you're doing is you're investing in those people. You're right. Spending time. You're trying to, embed as much wisdom, that you're able to in hopes that, they'll bear more fruit. If you will. Yeah.
And then it becomes sustainable hopefully after you leave, because you've built something that will survive that hopefully they can pass on.
Do you think if you combine a few of these skills we just previously talked about, we kind of come together in an influence skill, being present in their life, being true to yourself, and kind of guiding them exactly how you want, convincing them to do exactly what you want, but to get them to want to do it?
Yes.
And that's one of the big factors. If everything remains constant that we've already spoken about in average leadership, I think kind of getting that influence factor to make your people want to be successful as well. That's one thing that I would like to throw in there as well.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
I was thinking about, again, the way you do that to me is you get them involved.
Mm-hmm.
You listen to their concerns, share information, just all the things you were saying, tell them things they're doing right,
Absolutely.
focus on the solution. So, right, it's a contact sport, and you can stay engaged and involved in it.
Absolutely.
And you can learn some skills.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to go too far off, but I mean, understanding someone's behavioral style, I think, is important.
Mm-hmm.
I think understanding a model, at least on what coaching is, or how to hold people accountable, can be helpful in doing that. But you still got to practice,
Yes.
and want to do it.
Definitely.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, so influencing has been key to everything we've been doing.
Oh,
If you sit down
100%.
and if you build the processes together, the buy-in comes 20 times faster. The herd moves up to the early adapters, and the late adapters hopefully move up into the herd. And that took me a while to learn that too. That people, the way you influence people is let them be a part of the decision-making process, and then once it's their idea, they're off and running.
So that brings up a super interesting point that we talked about yesterday, John and I. So it's funny in any type of research that you read, people that we talk to, like you, who actually are in the weeds, who are doing it, who are the leaders of these massive teams. The term participative management, you let your people participate in the decision-making process. It always comes up, and it always reigns as being very positive for teams. But it's funny. There's a lot of people that I've talked to in executive positions, and maybe they're being pessimistic, but that people, this is their opinion, essentially paraphrasing, people really want to feel like they have the ability to make decisions or have a say in something, but most people are very, very uncomfortable actually making the decision. They don't actually want to make the decision. They just want to feel like they have an input, that they are heard in the decision-making process. Do you find that to be true?
There's no better way to even describe myself. I mean, so I'm one of them, but the decision has to be made. So you find the best way to get to it. I see people learning that experience. John and I are seeing right now. Our teams report every week what work they've done, and the managers critique the work and give advice and additional assignments to it. And I read all those. And so some of the leaders are asking their future leaders to actually do that critique work of their peers. And they're saying, my God, this is hard to tell a peer who I was one of not so long ago, I think you should consider maybe doing this instead of doing that, or what's your next step? So we've got people down through the organization right now are learning those lessons right now on when the buck does stop with you because of your title or because your responsibility, that you do have to make the decision, even if there are groups of people making it below. So that's helping our organization a lot right now. Is people learning before they really are where the buck stops, what it's like to be where the buck stops.
So then your position is that most people are probably inherently uncomfortable making decisions, but they can learn to do so.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes when there are stalemates, I'm dealing with one right now. You got to step in and be the boss sometimes, but hopefully that's few and far between, and you've earned enough respect from them that when you do that, sometimes they don't feel like we just went backwards.
And I would add that in those situations that do happen, I've seen you do it, is you tell them why. Because you do oftentimes have information they don't have, and this is going to be the best way to go the future for what what is being discussed, but you let them have healthy conflict along the way.
So you're saying because it's information I had, and that's almost reverse of it's in a different direction. Put the decision making process where the information is. So there are some cases where the information is not down, it's up. So I've got to make the decision. You see that?
Yeah, I
reverse?
do see that. And
Yeah.
depending on what's going on in the company with acquisitions or
That's right.
that's what I'm talking about. They're not going to.
Yep.
Yeah,
Good
you
point.
tell them in general what it is, but not details of the strategy.
Right.
Right.
So when Ethan and I were
Mm-hmm.
talking about some of the different questions that we wanted to cover in this podcast, one of the things that Ethan came up with, he was thinking about was adaptability, being an adaptive
Ooh.
leader, and it kind of led to the question of, what are, on a day-to-day basis, your leadership role, the role that you occupy at that point in time changes day to day. So one day you may actually have to be dealing with troubleshooting issues within operations, or maybe some KPI issues, whatever it may be, some process fails or someplace, whatever it may be, a bottleneck somewhere. And another day, it may be a strategic meeting that you have all day long, all sorts of different roles that you occupy in your leadership role. So what are some of those different roles that you've had to occupy? What does that look like for you, Will?
Different roles for adaptability.
No, like different roles. I mean, like the role of a coach, the role of, a strategist, the role of, X, Y, Z, fill in the blank.
Okay.
Good question. I mean, you have to go in a day's time. You may have to move from empathetic coach to driver coach, and it's sometimes with the same person with a different situation. Sometimes it's different people. So, that influencer stage comes in, that, you're dealing with the different personality types. So that sometimes influences, how adaptive you've got to be in that day. You might have somebody crying to you one day because they're having a really bad personal day and a bad work day, and they come to you and you got to be empathetic. Friend, not coach. So that's a challenge, I think, for probably everybody in business. I have that daily.
So what in terms, and Ray, we'll get back to you with this question as well, but Will, in terms of which role has been the hardest for you to take on, what's the hardest role you think for you?
Early on would be coach, coming from a peer-to-peer stage. And I remember that period vividly when they pitched me the keys and said drive, and I wasn't ready. So that imposter syndrome we talk about a lot, and people that I work with now have it, that have been promoted over peers. And I've just recently had a conversation with somebody, and so this would be kind of confidant influencer maybe with this gentleman I was working with, but you're in this role because you were very good at what you did, and we need other people to be as good as you were. So if you think you don't have anything to offer to the conversation, you're wrong, because you wouldn't be sitting in the seat. So be confident in that you do have the answers. You did know how to do it. You've just never taught anybody. So we'll work with you to help you learn how to teach what it was you did that was successful. And these are people, some of them that are kind of bucking what gets measured gets managed, and that's the process piece that I'm trying to bring into the sales team that hasn't existed before. We got great salespeople. Let's make other people great, and we can only do that by teaching them how we did it. And we can't teach them unless we got a process to teach. So take the natural stuff, try to fit it into a box, not a tight box, a loose box, but something where we can teach. So back to your question, adaptability, being a teacher, being a teacher, being a coach, being a listener, being a learner. I think I have to switch all day long between those things, depending on whatever situation comes up.
Okay, that's a great answer. That's exactly what I was gonna. Right, you were saying day to day, and it could be phone call to phone call. That you're right. That you're just changing that. Right, like we're all created differently. Some of us need encouragement. Some of us need we have those different. I want to say tangibles. That's not the word. Needs that helps us. Okay, recognition. There's all the different aspects, and some great points. The other one that came to mind that you alluded to is, the best definition that I've read throughout all the time is, right? The best definition of leader is a leader that creates great leaders that in turn create great leaders, right? And so you're keeping that going, and you're training, or you're at the same time that we're figuring this out, right? We're in turn sharing that information so that they can learn, and in turn keep it going down. And yeah, and adaptability. I think that was the first business book I ever read. Might be dating myself, but Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was,
Oh, we've all read that, I think.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. But
First one I read too.
yeah, was it? Yeah, it was a great book, and helping you, wrap your head around change and how important it is was. I think it was a great tool to learn early on.
So what would you say is probably the hardest? Has there been a hardest role for you?
The first one that comes into mind is actually, the military roles, right? You think you have this audience here that, right, they can't go anywhere. They typically can't talk back. And so what's so hard about that? But, they also carry M16s. And so.
What's frag mean?
Yeah. But honestly, I think it's every new role brings its own, right? When you do something, right, you're normally, you're seen or you're promoted because you had this aspect and you did a good or great job, and now, right, you're wanted to be put in this role, which sometimes could be just a small leap, and sometimes it could be a very different task with larger objectives. And right, so I think each time that we take on a new role, it's it's difficult, and you have to adapt.
The biggest challenge in adaptability for me, just by listening to Ray just now, has been how to motivate different people. That's a challenge.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So it's still coach, you're still motivator, you're still leader, but it's different for everyone. And when you hit a wall, it's frustrating, when somebody has the skill set or that they can do it, but they don't see it yet. How you keep probing the line to find that thing that clicks with them.
Yeah.
And I've had to use John a lot and lean on him a lot when I come into those situations that, I don't want to give up. And I've had some people give up too quick on some people, and I don't want to yet. I think it's there. We just haven't found the magic button to push, right?
Correct.
You get that too?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You don't want to give up on somebody,
Yeah.
they're the right person.
Yeah, and there's definitely, right, some that have a attribute or characteristic that make it, man, it just feels like 10 times harder to find that missing component.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can strive and work through those, and I'm still stumbling on some of those, but when you can make that connection or that break through that wall, yeah, it's a good feeling as a leader, I guess.
And so that there may not be a clear-cut answer to this, but in either of your roles and your experience, you've probably not found the magic bullet. I'm sure you haven't, but what have you found to motivate different types of people?
John Horton,
That's
my silver bullet.
Yeah.
Thank you. So,
John, what's the secret?
I think first thing is to listen. I mean, really listen. To go back to your point, I found that most in my coaching, especially someone who is having trouble with change, is to really listen for the first hour I'm with them is listen and see what their world's like. Don't agree with them, but I understand. And now that these things exist, let's talk about the path forward. Okay, but I just wanted to make sure I got all this out. So I think listening and asking questions based on a response they gave is to direct them toward this path.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah, and I imagine like everyone has a different set of skills, everyone's mind works in different ways. And so, I mean, if you can find, I just in my experience, if you can find a role that really satisfies what they're good at and what gives them energy in their job, that really seems to motivate people. But of course, you can't always find that with everyone. Not everyone's always motivated by something at work. They're actually motivated by things outside of work, and there's not a lot you can do about that. Maybe there's not the right person.
I have a personal quick story because you hit something. the most difficult challenge I had in my professional career was I was offered a really a nice job, a nice bump and all that, but I made the decision with my head and not my heart. And I wasn't in it. Now I had a great team, but that wasn't my purpose. So the corporation let me go back to what I was doing. You'll love this. And they said, now we do want you to know we're going to reduce your salary to what it was before you took this job. I said, I'm fine. But then I got a new leader, and I surpassed that amount within a year or two. But it is. So I think this connecting to something you're really passionate, care about,
Passionate's the key
is
word.
so important. And I think we all have gifts, and you guys have found yours. And
We hope so.
They've found yours, and you're living it out, being true to yourself.
I'm a big fan of the assessment tests, right? The DISC profiling, right? It doesn't totally nail an individual, but at least it gives you, right, where their mind's at, how they make their decisions, and that I think is one of the most important aspects to reaching them at their level, right? In order to guide or to nurture, and right, I like Will. Right, I'm a driver, and I honestly I would not want to be or have any other characteristic. It doesn't mean that drivers are the best leaders. I think what the personality or the characteristic of driving does is it whatever's in front of you, whether it's just driving numbers or driving to be better, right? It's a little easier, I feel, not knowing, the other ones, but through those assessment tests and what they really mean and getting ingrained with that, right, helps you with empathy to help see their mindset, of their thought process. And I think that's what really engages. And to John's point, right, it's passion. I think it's passion is, the main ingredient for, there's I'm gonna keep rolling on that. One of the other questions is, can anybody be a leader? And right, is everybody meant to be a leader? And right, I personally feel that every individual is passionate about something, and therefore, right, if they are nurtured in how they can express that passion, then in that point, anybody can be a leader. Now, does everybody want to? No, definitely not. And but I agree, it's passion, and passion is what allows us to pull people to our side, or to storm the beach, if you will. And
it gives you energy, and also we use, Will and I use it, and probably others do, but I really do think of a world-class college football team.
Sure.
The vision and their passion and this commitment to the goal and all that. And before I forget, you've paid me a lot of compliments today, and thank you.
You're
But
welcome.
I have one though here that he made me think about, which was, he's a driver. I've observed Will for years, and he is one of the 6%, they say, of the population.
I'm a freak.
Will, I always tried to figure out his style, and he could gravitate to all four easily. And it's harder but actually it's a gift. He doesn't have one bias, so he can fluctuate and move and adapt. And I just say, I wish I could do that. I just can't make that hard a decision right now. So I wanted to share that with you. That's the way you use that and adapt to other people to determine their needs. Great job.
And that's the primary reason I've never liked personality assessments. And they have their place. They do. Me personally, I don't like it because I fall into the same bucket as Will's. Like, I don't, in a personality assessment, I never fall into a bucket, and so I've never liked them. But for your example, like most people, there's a lot of people that they're not super self-aware of themselves. So if you just ask them, how do you think? What are you passionate about? They may not be able to tell you. So those assessments, they do help a whole lot with that, for sure.
That's a good point.
Definitely. So piggybacking on your question, I'm going to ask Will. So do you think that everyone can be a leader? Does everyone want the responsibility of leadership? Does everyone have the capability to be a leader?
So Rebecca and I have been watching The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. been out for, I told you I might bring this up. That's something you just said keyed in my head. But we're, to answer your question, in this show, they pull up an iPad and they show him an interview of somebody with regard to him. And there was one where Grant, I can't remember his name, Horace Grant, maybe.
Yeah.
Played with him and
Yes, he did.
didn't particularly like him. And it boiled down to the fact that Jordan pushed him hard. And so Jordan said that he said leadership comes with a price. And I think back to somebody in my career that's pushed me, and I understand this price. When you're pulling someone that doesn't want to be pulled, it affects your relationship. And when you're driving somebody that doesn't want to be driven, it affects your relationship. So, and Jordan said at the end, he said, he thought about it and he said, you know, so he thought leadership has a price. He said winning has a price. So to go bring it back full circle to your question, I think that's something that not everybody has the constitution to stick with. When you have to be that part of the leadership person that drives people and makes them uncomfortable and almost has yourself in a unenviable position with them or unliked. Most people want to be liked. And so to do the things that you got to do to get people to be their best selves is not always fun. So in that sense, I think not everybody can be a leader because they don't have the constitution to stick with that. I don't even enjoy it, you know, and it doesn't come natural to me, maybe to some people, but
There's some people that it does.
yeah.
I know some people that it does.
Yeah.
You know, I love that question, and you've asked it of him before, and I've really you asking it has helped me clarify my answer even more, which is I think people do have the capability to influence others, and for a positive good. So in that sense, yes, but in a formal sense, and in terms of leading other people, no, because they don't want to. They'll do it on this informal basis. But in terms of leading a pack, no.
And that poses a really big issue with organizations because you have to have people filling these seats of these management roles, right? I mean, you have supervisors, you have mid-level managers, directors, VPs, all the way up to executives, and you got to have people in there. So if you have to have hundreds of managers in an organization and there may be a leadership shortage, you know, what do you do? You know, if not everyone was meant to be a leader, then what do you do?
Plug the hole.
Yeah.
And mentor.
Piggybacking off of Michael Jordan, you know, Kobe, he said something very, very, very similar, and it was in that video that the What is Leadership video, and much of his stance on leadership was about that extreme desire to achieve and push a team forward to achieve those goals with you and all, and that somewhat aggressive take on holding people accountable toward it. Now he's in the NBA. Obviously, you know, you got to have athletes. You've got other super aggressive athletes that you're playing with. Like you got to be that way. But so like in business, it would seem like there might be an issue with, and not like you got to do it, but how do you make sure that you're still fertilizing people, like your relationships, right? Like how do you make sure you're still building strong relationships and not breaking that relationship down as you're having to be difficult with people like that, as you're having to hold them accountable and really push them? I mean, has there been anything that either of you have found that, you know, this is what I've really found to be effective, or are you still working on that?
Open communication. I mean, when you hit a frustration level, you got to be open with it. You can't let it build inside of you because then your behavior is going to change toward that person. So you got to get it on the table as quickly as possible. And they can either accept it or they can't accept it. And I've had to do that. And
You have done that, and you do it well because it brings silence to the meetings for a little while, but you say it courageously and considerately, and it has always result in positive movement. It really has. Okay, this is going on, and they knew it was going on, but now it's out. Let's talk about it and go forward.
Well, you're building a relationship, right? So when you're having those one-on-ones, right? You're edifying, you're throwing out there, and you're really making it a point that, hey, we're on the same team, and I understand you, and right, you're here because this huge benefit that you bring to the company. So, right, you're building up those, and let's say you look at it as a gas tank, right? So you're building that up, and then sometimes you're going to have those conversations where you're going to break it down and deplete that fuel level, if you will. But right, as long as you're having those one-on-ones with constant and honest feedback, then you're staying up there in the.
What's how many credits to debits do you sometimes say? Is it
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Five-
Oh, yeah, in terms of,
five
yeah,
affirmations
yeah,
to-
five to one in terms of the encouragement,
Yeah.
because they'll want to repeat the behavior.
Yeah, Stephen
To
Covey had
leverage
something about that, and it wasn't exactly that, but it was about putting pennies in the piggy bank of
The
a
emotional
relationship.
bank.
Exactly.
Amount of
Emotional
trust
bank
and
account.
deposits and withdrawals.
There you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
and when when you have somebody like that, you have to make conscientious decisions to praise to get that bank account level up before you sometimes have the tough conversation. It may feel a little synthetic or fake, but
No,
it's
right.
it's part of how you manage that situation. So for anybody listening to this that aspires to lead, those are the tough things that you have to do that don't always feel natural or right, but it is right.
Yeah.
It's the right thing to do.
So speaking about those who aspire to lead, right now it kind of sounds like we're giving the leadership certain titles. What about those who kind of find themselves emerging throughout maybe lower level jobs as the leader? Maybe they're the leader in that office, seems to be the leader on the line, just the unspoken leader.
Oh, boy.
How do you, no, do you have
No,
something
that
to-
is, I think that's it.
Ethan, you talking about just anyone who has influence in a group? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
pretty
shows
much
the
in-
characteristics.
Yeah, they bubble
Okay.
up.
Okay. So high potential then.
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Do we still consider those leaders just because they aren't at the leadership position? I'd like to hear
Oh,
your
yeah,
guys'
I do
theory
that.
about
Oh,
that.
definitely.
You may have more opportunity to answer that question than me.
Well, I think that's what we're teaching, the different levels of leadership is, right? That's what you want to spot, right? It's much better as a company if even if these individuals come in at an entry level position, right? If you can spot that gleam in the eye, that extra giddy up, and focus on that and mentor them through the ranks and retain them, right? That's about the biggest win that you can get right there, because then that individual feels that confidence from their leadership is rising in the ranks, and then they can in turn, like Will and John, that's a story to be told that's going to be able to influence others.
So Ray, what would some of those characteristics be that you would look for?
Just not so two things I think the most, one that somebody's not okay with the status quo,
Yes.
right? Wants to not just have a conversation to have a conversation, but ask those, well, what if, or why not, or right? They're just going that extra mile, and I'm combining them now, but that extra step to have it make sense in their head, right? They want to wrap their head around it, not just, I don't know, you told me that's what I need to do.
So people that are curious.
Curious.
They want to
Thank you.
know.
Thank
Yep.
you. Yep. Exactly.
So you said questioning the status quo. So could we then agree that probably most really good leaders, that's going to be like fundamental to who they are? They're curious. They question the status quo. Would you all agree with that?
Yeah,
Oh,
they see
yes.
what's needed. They pop their head up, and you started the conversation today with they see that and they take action.
Yeah.
It's an activity. It's in them to
I think
do it.
Last week in my leadership article, I think I signed off with allow people to be curious. There's been times in this organization where I was asking questions and I was curious and I got pushed back and it frustrated me and stifled me. So I need to, I wrote down recognizing people not happy with the status quo. I think that's awesome.
You agree? What about you, Will? What would be some characteristics that you would look for?
I like that one.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's the sole one?
I'm sticking with that.
All
And in the past I may have even reacted the wrong way to people that were asking questions, but they were showing they were interested, and they were curious, and they wanted improvement. So it's that those people, those curious people asking lots of questions, that's what you're looking for, and they're not hard to spot.
And what you get is the buy-in, because I think questions and sometimes pushing back is their way of buying in for a lot of people. They want to understand the why.
So did
And
either of you
how-
ever find that, when people were asking questions, did it ever feel like, and maybe this is it's part of a leadership type of thing, and insecurity or, whatever it may be, but did you ever find yourself, not happy they're asking questions, making it feel like maybe they're questioning, your judgment on things or anything like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I feel like that's definitely a hard thing with leadership is, you said allowing people to be curious. And I think sometimes that comes off to a leader as you don't trust me or you don't believe that I'm capable of making this decision. Anything that you would advise people to do to help reduce that?
Oh, I wish I had access to something Scott gave me a year ago, but we were discussing over one weekend with an email chain why it is so hard to accept questioning of your maybe something, an edict that you put out there or a plan you're trying to drive, and that when people question it, is that they don't think you know what you're doing. All the imposter syndrome things come rushing back into you to make you doubt yourself. So you don't allow the question. So I say just assume positive intent when questions are coming to you. Try to answer them and try to learn from the questions that are coming, because it probably means they don't have clarity from you at that point. And John likes to say some saying like clarity is kindness or something like that.
I do when I get, oftentimes in facilitation, you hear a lot. So one of my favorites really is, well, tell me more about that. Or I'll ask them, why are you asking that question? What are you concerned about, or where do you want to go with this?
So probing their thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get their thoughts on it. I want them involved in the conversation.
You're definitely the question guru. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
So Ray, tell us about a time, we talked early on that leaders often have this facade of, some type of an impermeability, that you are, that you're all knowing. Tell us about a time when you actually failed in your leadership role, and how did you recover from that?
Well, the really cool thing about my particular leadership style is I never have to look very far back to find that failure point. And, it's always right there. And
Stole my answer.
and I just had a great one. I was not too recently, don't want to pinpoint it, but I was having a conversation with another leader, and it came off as very negative. I mean, it was always, it's because of this, or it's because you did that, and it was just nonstop. And after an hour, I was like, God, man, this is driving me nuts. And I gave it another hour, just trying to find that way in to take the conversation to the next level or show this. And after 2 hours, right, I was scheduled for more time, but after 2 hours, I just had to get out of there. I couldn't. And to me, right, that was a failure point in my leadership, because what could I have done differently? How could have I taken a different approach? What could I have said to help this individual see a more positive light in that? And that, to me, I'm still working through that, because I don't have that answer. But I like to feel that I'm decent about finding something to, win that person over or gain, not just to tell them what to do, but to buy in. It's such a phenomenal phrase. Getting that buy-in, then they're off to the races themselves.
Yes.
It's no longer, then you're just providing path and not complete direction. And so, yeah, again, that, I still, if I can find a way to get past the, that negativity, or even just a forceful pushback, and practice more patience, that's going to help me. So.
Do you ever find that, if something happens like that and someone is either not open to a different point of view, or things just turn negative, do you ever find that maybe it's just best to just kind of walk away and revisit it later? It kind of sounds like that's what you did after the 2-hour meeting.
Yeah. So I'm still piecing that together. What the outcome will eventually be. Yeah. Strike that through the. Let's end that one there.
All right.
Cut that.
So John, what about you? Let me make sure we have enough time on here.
Okay.
Before we start Yeah, like 6 minutes on that. So tell us about a time when you failed in your leadership role and how did you recover?
The time I failed as a leader was taking that super job,
Mm.
and that that I was not really committed and passionate about. I had great people, I really did, and I took care of them for a while, but my heart wasn't in it. And the way I recovered was letting some people know that I made the wrong choice, and I'll be more effective for the organization if I do this.
Hmm.
And they acknowledged that, and I recovered by going back to what I was doing. It was hard. It was really, really hard. But I know I did the right thing long term.
So when you were in that decision-making process, did you know which was the right decision, or did you really have a lot of anxiety about it and a lot of doubt about it, and you just had to fight through it?
That is a great question. Well, when I initially took the position, I remember walking in my backyard in LaGrange, Georgia for 30 minutes. I want this. I want this. No, you don't. No, you don't. I want it. I don't. So I took it, and I knew really quick that I didn't. And I went right to the person over HR who was really responsible for this, for me getting in that role. And I just said, I'm really disappointed, but I understand. And I took it and just went forward. I hope I answered your question.
You did, yes.
Okay.
So if I could,
Okay.
John, I love
Yes.
that, right? So that's
So-
not just a difficult decision to make on your part, right? But I
Right.
think if we can find that bridge, right, as leaders, being able to recognize those individuals. You know, I've had some people in the past where you elevate them and really, you know, just didn't succeed like I hoped, right? I don't want to lose that individual as a you know, employee or a leader, but finding that avenue to maybe
Oh,
step it back, right? If there's a way for us to better recognize, okay, if I move this person back and I take away some of that money, is it just going to be a negative experience for
Mhm.
everybody around? Or, you know, can we have a conversation that's going to make me feel comfortable it's the right decision as well as that individual?
Well,
I mean,
his decision was, he recognized it himself. You're talking about when
Yeah.
you recognize
Right.
it.
oh,
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
I don't,
I could.
my answer is no,
Mhm.
we can't, but you might have that time where that person knows, like he knew,
Yeah.
and they're like, whew,
Yeah.
you know, but you just don't know until you have
Right.
that, you know, maybe you get a gut sense that they know they're not in the right role, and there is a way to find, I think you can do it if you think they sense they're in the wrong role,
Mhm.
I think you can have
Yeah.
that conversation.
Because if there's any uncertainty, right, there, the damage that could be done would be way more, right? So it doesn't balance out, and so you want to make a decision that's going to really reduce.
I think that's why so many people don't promote from within,
Mm.
and they don't want to risk the position that's filled, that's solid. They rather bring somebody in because if they're gone, they haven't lost anything on the backside.
Unless they bring in that wrong leader, right?
Yeah, well,
It scares everybody else.
That seems to
away.
happen
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah,
I,
but I get your point.
I've made that I've done that. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I was
Mhm.
getting a shot at this question.
No,
but,
no.
but I brought in somebody who I thought was right and from the outside, and they weren't right, and I lost people.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
I've made that mistake.
Yeah.
And I've also made a mistake in because I'm impatient and not building a consensus, taking the extra time to build consensus, which is the first step in what?
Yeah, common purpose. You
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
I don't know. It's not the
The first step in the 12 steps.
first step. Or,
AA.
yeah.
Oh, you mean
I've-
the
hadn't been
Yeah.
there yet. Give me a few years.
You asked me earlier, I want to comment because I think this will help the audience in terms of finding the right seat on the bus and your passion and your gifts and that sort of
Mhm.
thing. I listened to one guy one time and he said, where do you get your energy? What sucks your energy?
Mm.
what do you like to learn about? What do you really want to do? And when you do it, do you want to know what time it is, or are you having a good time?
Hmm.
And I've followed that,
Yep.
and it's been very helpful. But I can tell when I'm not in the right spot,
Definitely.
and then it's my responsibility to do something about it, or have a leader help me get through it. And that one I gave you turned out, it really did turn out well, but it didn't happen overnight.
No.
It took about 6 months.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to leave that trail to the team and the others. I don't think you do. So you've got to suck it up and do what you have to do until you can make a change.
Yeah.
Is that what you said a minute ago? It reminds me of when you say "Good morning, God" or "Good God
Yes.
this morning."
Yeah, that was another
Same
one. No,
thing. I
really,
mean,
you can tell you're in the right spot. Thank you. When you get up most mornings, truly, you say, "Good morning, God." Now, if you're getting up every morning and saying, "Good God, it's morning," I want you to think about what you're doing. What has been your greatest struggle as a leader? You know what it's been for me? Confidence and self-doubt. It really has.
It's also listening, because Derek just said he wasn't going to ask that question.
But the way I got over it was through learning.
Yeah.
Just continuous learning and practicing.
There's not a single leader that like executive level leader that I have known, been in contact with, that does not have some form of imposter syndrome. I mean, even like we're talking about extremely successful guys. And it's funny because they've actually done research on that, showing that most high performing people do have imposter syndrome, and part of it is, people who are going to achieve a lot, they're going to push boundaries, and you push into different territories, you push the status quo, and you're going to be super uncomfortable all the time. And so, I mean, there's a lot of people who have imposter syndrome. I think most people, I think there's a couple CEOs I can think of that they may truly not have imposter syndrome, but I think most people in most leadership levels do, at least in my experience. What do y'all think about that?
It's reassuring.
It is. Yeah, it shows they're humble.
I'm not alone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that
Absolutely.
So, Will, what's been the most important thing in your leadership journey? What would you say is the most important thing that you've learned so far?
Oh, it's kind of hard to wrap that into a neat box.
We'll take a triangle.
You take a triangle. Trapezoid. Feels like a trapezoid. Really, I'm one of those people that you could say is trying to, my old self, I'm trying to think about my answer as opposed to listening to the person speaking. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room, but I want to have something good to say, get a smile or get a laugh, and to step back from that and truly listen and pause before I speak and really understand, really hear what somebody's trying to tell me. I've got so many people now with so many different work agendas, and I mean that in a good way, not in a negative agenda way, but what they're trying to accomplish, that I've got to really listen to what they're struggling with and then respond appropriately. And it's, the bigger we get, the more important that is. And so that's been a learning for me, still learning for me. I was never a good note taker. I'm a lot better note taker now than I was. Can't read my writing all the time, but I'm taking the notes. But I do watch people. I watch John. I see there are people that are good listeners. I think they're also in tandem. They're good note takers. So that's helped me. Yeah.
I haven't taken one note this whole time, so it doesn't look good.
Yeah. Failed. You asked when I failed. Yeah.
So, Ray, what about you?
I really think, going back to two realizations for me, in my estimation, helped me get a little bit better as a leader. And that's one, developing empathy, right? I'm pretty sure I suck terribly at that the majority of my, right? It was, early on that leadership style was just by pure force, pure will, right? It wasn't about completely about getting people on board. It's like, this is the best direction. I can convince you that's the best direction. Now let's get it done, not, the different walking them through and helping them understand the why. And then the second aspect was, right, really understanding that we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, and that's what you have to focus on, right?
Mhm.
Trying to put that triangle in a square hole isn't going to get it done.
Hmm.
So yeah, that would be
So you're a Marine. It was suck it up.
exactly exactly.
That doesn't work every day, does it?
Not in today's world, no.
Yeah.
So something that I would have loved to have done a little bit more deep dive research on this. We just didn't for this podcast. So I really want to hear about all three of you, John, Will, Ray, your experience on how has leadership changed over the course of your career? Not how has your leadership changed, but how has leadership in general changed? There's most people that I know that I've talked to about it say something to the effect of it used to be like get your butt to work style, an autocratic style of leadership, and it's changed quite a bit. But I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear how it's changed over the course of your career and what it looks like today. So Ray, we'll start with you.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's exactly. I've had numerous conversations about that. That's all it was back in the 70s, 80s.
Mhm.
Will for the 70s, me for the 80s. But it was just that get it done. You'll get it done because I told you to. And if you don't want to do it, guess what? There's 10 other guys outside the door that are willing to do that. And right, so if you think of leadership back then, I don't know that you could call it leadership, but like military, it was probably a very easy way to climb the ladder. Just you had to force the right attitude to force people what to do. And now, definitely better because we're in a mindset that we're enriching people's lives at the same time that we're making a profit, right? You can't say, making a profit doesn't mean anything because, well, it does. It surely does. But at the same time, if we can make that profit, enrich people's lives, help them to grow in a personal and professional level, and that's where we've come, and and that path as well as the one that we're on is going to continue going and evolve, and who knows what it'll look like 10 years from now.
So how would you characterize leadership today? Like what is in terms of like autocratic, get your butt to work? What does it look like today?
Well, you're using big words on me now. Sorry. If I'm gonna give you my terminology, right, it's more of a touchy-feely.
Okay.
Right. Well, if that's the definition of autocratic, then I don't know.
Sure. Okay.
Delete that out.
Okay. It'll be in the blooper section. It'll be in the extras. I'll let people at ABG see it, but they have to pay for it though.
Yeah, look at this idiot. I like that.
Okay.
He's
Okay.
thinking.
Will, what about you? How has leadership changed over the course of your career?
Yeah, so you're pushing me back to the 70s.
When he was born.
I'm only 28.
Okay.
So I can't go
Benjamin
back.
Button, that's all right.
I can't
Oh,
go.
yeah.
I can't go back that far. I find it hard to believe that there's been a time where people didn't want to find purpose in their work. So so when people say touchy feely, I mean we give political correctness more lip service today than in the first part of my career. At the board meeting yesterday, there's a component that the world wants large companies, corporations of our size to address openly and publicly. They call it ESG, which is environmental, social governance. And so what are we doing for the environment and what are we doing for social integration, programs of implementation of social whatever. And but I just think like, my dad 30, 45, 50 years ago going to work, did he not care about having purpose? So I can't believe that's changed that much. We're people are the same. Now, we used to wear terrible looking, ugly brown colors, and that's all we have. Is that because were we only happy? Were we not happy in the 70s and we just wore brown? Or so I don't know. I just can't. I want to find purpose in work. I want to find more purpose in work now as a middle-aged man definitely more than when I was younger, but I
Mm.
see you two looking for purpose and work at a younger age, a much younger age than me. So I don't know. Maybe it's that could be something that I just don't quite understand yet. But I'm searching for what you're searching for. It just took me. I'm later in life looking for it. So
Mm.
so that could be the change that younger people want to find that quicker than people of my age did when we started.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if that helps answer the question or
Yeah.
anything, but I think we've always, no, I didn't look for purpose earlier on in life as much as I do now.
So my
So-
question is, do you think that's better later in life with some more wisdom, or early on before you quite haven't learned?
Good question, but I wish I would have been more trepidatious and eager and brave when I was younger than when I waited for confidence. You see, I mean, I told you I like to read a lot of books about people that are super successful were eager, young to get after it, you know? And so I see the value in wisdom if you're making policy and decisions, but I see the value of doing what they're doing at a younger age because you got a much longer runway to achieve something great.
Sure.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So talking about like the 70s, you said, were we all upset because we wore brown and we weren't happy? I thought that was an interesting point. Like and I haven't done any research on this yet. I mean, we will at some point, but it just stands to reason that the leadership, the way that it has changed with our social values. Same with clothes. We don't wear the same clothes anymore. As a society, we don't expect the same things out of our leaders anymore at work. And so I think it stands to reason that the human element was always there, that need to have purpose, to have someone listen to you, to have someone help you grow and develop, all those things we've talked about. But it just was never normalized in our society to request that of our leaders and to expect that of our leaders. And it's almost like today, with as outspoken as my generation is, and I'm sure generations that come would be about those things, and are coupled with just as a society. I mean, 60-year-old people, they want to be growing and developing. They don't just want to be stagnant. So it's almost like we have changed a lot. Leadership's changed quite a bit, but it's almost like a reflection of some of the social changes that have occurred, and now we request different things of leaders. What do y'all think?
I think that's spot on, because I have seen it, being by far the oldest in here. It has changed from autocratic control, being the expert, to definitely more collaborative. And the values have changed. That's what I think they're saying about young people, and some people do find it faster than others. And I wanted to understand what I thought was driving that. And I think it's two things definitely contributed to it. With the advent of the 80s, everyone has access to information today.
Yeah.
And that when I was growing up, you'd be lucky if you got the news the next day. Now it's instantaneous. And the other reason I think that's driving it, well, certainly the values have changed, but also the rate of change is so fast. I mean, just think what the laptop Microsoft didn't even come up with their system until 1985.
Yeah.
And look where it's gone. I mean, it's to the moon.
Yep.
So definitely, and that's where I think leaders have to adapt.
Yeah.
And the more you can find that purpose, because some people do find it early. I think some entertainers do find it quickly.
Yeah.
Why do you say that about entertainers?
Well, for example, I was thinking as you were talking about, I said some of them, John Denver, Buddy Holly, these guys, I mean, they knew what they wanted to do when their parents had other plans for them.
Okay. All right.
And they pursued it.
Mhm.
And they were poor for a while, but boy, they went after what they thought was important to them. That was the context I meant.
Got it.
But most people aren't that gifted to do that. And I don't mean determine it, but I mean have the gifts to do what they do. So you have to find another path.
John Denver.
So it sounds like the changing of leadership, we're kind of talking about some of the roles, but a lot of the influence that the people underneath you have had. What do you think about the ever-changing environment that we're in? We are no longer, Ford no longer owns Ford. It's a CEO with a board. There's not really one leader at the top anymore. Also supply chain issues, not only talking about the COVID But just having more supply. Ford used to own its own steel mills. Now they're importing everything. Do you think that the layers and layers of complexity as we grow as an economy and grow as businesses to meet those consumer demands plays a large role in the evolving roles of leadership?
It's a big question.
Yeah, that's got will written all over.
I was going to kick that back to Derek.
Well, I'll get you started. Okay, I think it's shown that we're more interdependent. I mean, it's a global world,
Mm-hmm.
and it really is kind of joined at the hip. So I think that has changed. I mean, you just can't look at the way you're doing it and be alone. And I think that does drive some things.
Okay. Absolutely.
I really have no idea how to answer, but I will say every great society has chased cheap labor, and we're no different. And the world has shrunk, but cheap labor, all developed countries have found cheap labor, and there's always a reckoning at some point. You lose, we were the cheap labor one time. We no longer are. We're using cheap labor somewhere else, and we're getting beat. That might make management more aggressive than we need to be, but other than that, I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Well, to your point, I mean, you could keep having the discussion, but because of what you just said on that, then I think that drives innovation and creativity, because you're going to find a way through the private sector, to the extent the country can have it, ways to deal with that, and that's where the technology comes in. But still, it's about the people. It goes back to the empathy, and that's why I think going forward, to your point, that would be my feeling. Would be, hey, technology's great, and it's going to help you win and this, but you can't forget about how important being a leader is to use it effectively.
Well, I think part of what Ethan was touching on with globalized business and expanding complexity of business structures within the hierarchy itself, there's probably somewhat of a not disassociation, but I guess a disconnection between leaders at the top and your frontline people, maybe even mid-level managers, maybe even director level people, just because of how large organizations are. So I mean, we've all played the telephone game. We know how communication breaks down as the chain goes down. If you got a CEO who's leading, 10,000 people, how is he going to get the word out to everybody in exactly the way that he wants to do it? I mean, so there's going to be a disconnect between a lot of the employees and some of these senior leaders. So I mean, I think that adds some more complexity to it. And how do you actually effectively communicate at such a broad level, gain buy-in, all that sort of stuff? I think it definitely adds a lot of complexity to it versus a mom and pop shop, which that adds its own complexity to it. But it's definitely easier to keep, like we talked about, very close relationships with all of your people. So I think both situations have some advantages and disadvantages.
You win. Hardest question of the day.
That's not the award I wanted.
but I'll think more on it. So basically, it's how has globalization changed leadership style?
Sure.
So it's good. Thanks for asking, and I haven't thought a lot about it, but I will.
Very nice.
Awesome.
So this may be the most important question of the day for anyone that is listening, and the question is, Ray, I'll start with you first. What advice would you give leaders if they're starting off in a leadership journey, if they've been in their leadership journey? What advice would you give them?
To me, that one's simple, and it's not the greatest answer, but mine is, I tell people 90% of what I know today is because I screwed it up somewhere in the past, and I let it sink in, thought about it, and I try not to make the same mistake again. Right? If there's one piece of advice is don't be that guy, don't be that person. Right? Try to do your best to listen to wisdom, to let somebody else's thoughts sink in, and let it stir around in there for a while, and make good decisions from that.
So, very
Good.
How about you, Will?
Me. So advice to future leaders.
So anyone who's either in a current leadership role or, high potential employees, people who have been in a leadership role for a while, any type of advice you have for them?
I mean, don't wait for it. If you're ready, I don't think there's definitely a maturity factor and an experience factor. But if if you want it, ask for it and go get it and just get started
that's
like you guys are early. Don't wait for the right time in your career or wait for it to be offered to you. Stand up and yell for it and push for it. If you think you've got the right stuff, then do it, because this organization is big and there's so many gaps to fill and so many places where you can step in and be a leader if you want to. And so age and experience might not always have to be the prerequisite for that.
I like that.
Good
What about
one.
you, John?
So I want to echo that. I think that is spot on. Is I varied a little. I would say I think you should do what you do well, but have those antenna up and see what's needed and seize the day. Carpe diem. Go ahead and listen. Be curious. Ask questions and find a support network or some coalition that might be able to help you, one or two people to help you drive it, and just go for it. But be authentic and be yourself, and make sure you care about what it is you're doing and why.
I like that. Go out and get what's yours.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yep.
I got it. This line, he's heard it, is the best way to predict the future is to create it. So that's right aligned with what you said.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good deal.
Not sure if I have too much emphasis in this, but I would say one is kind of find that vision and don't ever lose that vision. You can adjust it, you can make it adaptable, but always have the vision. And then two
Like that.
is never forget that even though you're a leader, you're most likely still a follower in some aspect. Unless you're at the very top of the food chain, you're always able to learn from someone else, get a mentor. Never consider yourself the almighty. There's always a bigger fish, and just learn to respect that, and hopefully the people below you will see that and respect that as well.
God, very well said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank y'all so much for being here. This has been
You're
great.
not getting off the hook. What's
No?
I want to hear your answer.
Oh, mine? Mine?
Oh, I like that, Ray.
Okay. Well, I have to think
That
about
was
this. I didn't
good.
think about what
love-
my answer
I
would be.
love the-
Let's see. The fishing.
I just like yeah.
No, mine, honestly, I would definitely say that you need to find what you're passionate about. And so if you're in a leadership role that's not aligned with what gives you energy, you need to step out of it. You need to find what gives you energy, because there's no way that you're going to be a great leader in a role that you're not suited for and that you don't have great energy for. You can have all the tricks in the book, the coaching, the mentoring, all that sort of stuff. And if you're clearly not right for the role, you don't need to be in it. So find something that you are right for. And when you do, like Will said, go after it with veracity, because someone else is going to be going after it as well. And you're the only person who's going to be able to actually make something happen for yourself. No one's coming to help you. So you need to make you need to make your future for yourself.
That was awesome.
Good.
I used to roll
Excellent.
my eyes at, reading that statement of, love what you do and you'll never work again day. But
That's exactly.
it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love what you do, right? There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be headaches, but right. God, good morning. That's
Yeah.
good job.
Well, thank y'all so much. It's been great. It's been awesome.
It
I
has.
appreciate y'all being here. I've really enjoyed having y'all.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Corporate
great
energy.
conversation. Yes, the corporate energy.
LLC.
Oh, yeah.